She made me feel crazy, but then I found her second phone. You're just being paranoid. That's what she'd always say. Every time I asked a simple question, every time I noticed something strange, she'd twist it around and make me feel like I was the problem. Like I was some overthinking lunatic who couldn't let things go. I started to doubt myself so much that I'd apologize for things I never even did. For things I felt. And that's the worst kind of betrayal, not when someone lies to you, but when they make you believe you're the liar. It wasn't like this in the beginning. At first, she was perfect, warm, attentive, always texting back quickly, always there when I needed her. She made me feel like I was finally with someone who got me. But somewhere along the line, things shifted. She got colder. Distant. Shorter replies. More nights out with the girls, more work calls that went on late into the evening, more silence between us. When I asked what was going on, she'd sigh, look at me like I was a child, and say, why can't you just trust me? And so I did. Or at least I tried. But the signs were everywhere. Little things at first. She'd lock her phone more often, keep its screen down even when she was alone in the room. She'd leave the apartment dressed like she was going to a red carpet event, but claim it was just dinner with coworkers. When I asked why I couldn't meet her friends after months of being together, she'd call me clingy, needy, dramatic. And I believed her. That's what messes with your head the most when you start thinking maybe you're the toxic one. Maybe you're imagining things. Maybe this is just how relationships are supposed to feel. I started pulling away from my own friends, afraid they'd judge me if I told them what I was feeling. I didn't want to sound crazy. I didn't want to admit I might be losing control. But then the dreams started. The kind where she'd be whispering to someone in another room, laughing, flirting, touching someone else while I stood there watching, invisible. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, heart racing, and she'd be asleep next to me, peaceful, like she wasn't slowly destroying my sense of reality. I thought I was losing it. Until the night I found her second phone. It was an accident. I wasn't looking for it, I swear. She'd gone to the shower and her regular phone buzzed on the table. It was nothing suspicious, just a notification from some app. But when I stood to move it, I noticed her purse had tipped over slightly. Something had fallen out, half hidden beneath the couch cushion. I reached down. And there it was. A phone I'd never seen before. Same brand, different case. No lock screen photo. Just plain black. My hands shook as I held it. Something deep inside me said, don't open it. Just leave it. Pretend you never saw it. But I didn't listen. I unlocked the screen. No passcode. The messages were worse than anything I'd imagined. Dozens of conversations. Different names. Most of them men. Some flirty, some explicit, some just chilling in their casual familiarity. Photos. Videos. Plans to meet. Memories she'd made while coming home and looking me in the eyes like nothing happened. I sat there frozen. Not angry. Not even heartbroken. Just numb. Everything made sense now. The gaslighting. The deflection. The guilt-tripping. She wanted me to doubt myself. It gave her more freedom. More space to live two lives while I stumbled through one I thought was real. I had been living in a lie and she was the one who'd built it. That night I didn't confront her. I didn't throw the phone in her face or scream accusations. No. That's what the old me would have done. The soft, forgiving, blindly loyal version of me. But that version was gone. She killed him. And now? I was going to make sure she knew exactly what she'd created. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with that second phone in my hand, scrolling through messages that turned my stomach, each one hitting harder than the last. The worst part? The way she spoke about me. Not just the cheating, that was its own kind of pain, but the mockery, the way she laughed about how easily she could manipulate me. He actually cried during a movie last night, she wrote to one guy. I almost felt bad lying to him, almost. Another message, he thinks I'm working late again, LOL. He'd lose his mind if he knew where I really was. There were dozens like that. Dozens. And with every line, every emoji, every hidden photo, something inside me hardened. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was being played by someone who looked me in the eyes every day and lied like it was nothing. By the time the sun came up, I had already backed up everything, screenshots, message logs, even voice notes. I wasn't sure why I did it at first. Maybe part of me still didn't believe it was real. Maybe I needed proof, something physical to remind myself that I hadn't imagined it all. But deep down, I think I already knew I was preparing for something bigger. Not a confrontation. Not some emotional breakdown. I was planning justice. Not loud, not violent, just deliberate and unforgettable. When she came out of the bedroom the next morning, wrapped in a robe, her hair still damp, she gave me that same casual smile. "Morning, baby," she said, leaning down to kiss my cheek. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just looked at her silently. Her smile faltered for a second, but only for a second. "You okay?" she asked, already turning toward the kitchen, already slipping back into the role she'd perfected. "You seem off." I almost laughed. I told her I was just tired. Long night. Didn't sleep well? She didn't press it. Why would she? She was used to me folding under pressure, apologizing even when she was the one who'd hurt me. But not this time. I had started studying her, her expressions, her tone, the little tells she didn't think I noticed. Everything she did was calculated. Everything she said was meant to keep me under control. But now I saw it all for what it really was, manipulation. Over the next few days, I played the role. I was affectionate, attentive, even more helpful than usual. I asked about her day, gave her space when she needed time to focus, even planned a small dinner with her parents, something she'd been begging me to do for months. She lit up when I mentioned it. "You're finally coming around," she said, wrapping her arms around me. "This means a lot." I kissed her forehead and smiled. "I just want everyone to see how strong we are." She had no idea. In the background, I made my moves. I set up the dinner at a quiet restaurant her parents liked, booked a private room, made sure the lighting was perfect, the seating arranged just right. I reached out to the manager, a guy I'd met once through a friend, and made a special request. A screen behind the table, visible only when I gave the signal. He didn't ask questions. Just said, "Got it." 3 days before the dinner, I started planting seeds. Little things. I told her I'd been thinking about our relationship more seriously. That I was starting to imagine our future. That I'd love to get her parents' blessing, just in case something big happened soon. Her eyes went wide. She was speechless for the first time in weeks. "You're not serious," she whispered. I smiled. "I've never been more serious." She spent the next few days giddy. Picking out her dress, getting her nails done, texting her friends about how he's finally doing it. She had no clue that the entire time I was going over every screenshot, every message, every disgusting little secret I now had sitting in a neatly organized file. And the night before the dinner, she tried to pull one more trick. She came into the room, said she was going to spend the night at her sister's, some last-minute bonding thing they hadn't done in a while. I raised an eyebrow just slightly. "On the night before dinner with your parents?" She laughed. "You know how she is. I'll be back early, promise." I nodded, kissed her goodbye, watched her leave. 10 minutes later, I turned on the GPS tracking app she didn't know I installed. She wasn't going to her sister's. Of course not. She was going to him. The one from the messages, the one she claimed was just a friend she'd barely spoken to in years. I watched the little dot move across the map until it stopped in a neighborhood she'd never once mentioned. Then I put my phone down, sat back, and smiled. She had no idea the next time she lied it would be her last. Because the stage was already set. And this time she wouldn't be gaslighting anyone. This time the truth would speak for itself. The morning of the dinner, she came back home humming. Literally humming. Like a child skipping through a field. She smelled like a different cologne, and her makeup was too fresh for someone who claimed she had barely slept at her sister's place. I didn't say a word. I just smiled at her from across the kitchen island as I poured us both coffee. She slid her arms around my waist and said, "Tonight's going to be perfect. I can't wait for you to talk to my dad. He's going to be so impressed." I looked her right in the eye and said, "I'm counting on it." She beamed, completely unaware of how far she'd pushed her luck. The hours dragged until the evening. I went through the motions: shower, shave, even ironed my shirt. I made sure everything about me looked polished, respectable, ready for the moment I was supposed to ask for her father's blessing. She wore a deep red dress and heels that clicked with confidence across our apartment floor. She looked stunning. If I didn't know better, I think she was the most loyal woman on the planet. But I did know better. I knew exactly who she really was. And soon, her parents would too. We arrived at the restaurant right on time. Her parents were already waiting. Her father stood to shake my hand, her mother gave me a kiss on the cheek. They were warm, kind, the type of people who genuinely believed their daughter could do no wrong. I felt almost sorry for what I was about to do. But not enough to stop. Dinner began casually. Light conversation, small talk, her mother asking about my work, her father telling a story about how he and his wife first met. She laughed along, placing her hand on my arm at all the right moments, squeezing gently like we were the picture-perfect couple. I played my role just like I had been. But the whole time I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. Because I knew what was coming. When dessert was offered, I gave the signal. Just a nod toward the waiter, nothing dramatic. The lights in the room dimmed slightly and a small screen slowly lit up behind us. Her parents turned, confused at first. She glanced over and then back at me, unsure. And then the screen began playing. It wasn't a video, just a slideshow. The first image, her in a mirror selfie, clearly in a hotel bathroom, timestamped just 3 nights prior. The second, a message thread from her second phone, displayed word for word. Last night was incredible, one message read. I love the way you grabbed my neck when I heard her mother gasp. Her father sat frozen. She turned to me, mouth wide open. What is this? She choked out. I kept my eyes on her parents. This, I said calmly, is the truth. The screen continued. Dozens of images, messages, flirty videos, voice notes. Her laughing about how easy I was to manipulate. Her making weekend plans with someone else while telling me she was on a work retreat. Her saying things like, I could tell him I'm out saving puppies and he'd believe me. Her father stood up, his hands shaking. Is this real? He asked, looking between us. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Her face had gone pale. Her carefully applied makeup was starting to crack beneath the weight of the spotlight. I turned to her slowly. You made me think I was crazy. Every time I asked questions, you shut me down. You flipped the blame, made me feel weak. And I started to believe you. I started to think maybe I was the problem. That's what hurts the most. Not just the cheating, but the way you watched me destroy myself just to protect your lie. Her mother was crying now, quietly. Her father still hadn't sat back down. I don't want to see any more, he said finally, turning to his daughter. You're coming home with us. We'll talk later. She reached for him like a child in trouble, but he stepped back. I shut off the screen. She turned to me, her voice shaking. You don't understand, No, I cut her off. I understand perfectly. You just didn't expect me to. She tried to say more, but the room was already emptying out. Her parents walked ahead of us in silence. She just stood there, stunned, her world collapsing in slow motion. And me? I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. Peace. The staff quietly helped reset the room as I left. The manager gave me a small nod. No words. Just quiet acknowledgement. I stepped outside, breathing in the cold air. It stung a little, but it felt clean. Honest. That night wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't even about exposing her to the people she loved. It was about reclaiming the version of me she tried to erase. The man who trusted his instincts. The man who saw through lies. The man who knew exactly what he was worth. And she was never going to be worth that again. After the dinner, she didn't come home. I wasn't sure if she stayed with her parents or with one of the guys from her second phone. Honestly, I didn't care. The apartment was finally quiet. Not the tense, anxious silence I'd gotten used to over the past few months, the kind that made my chest feel tight, like something terrible was always about to happen. No, this was different. The silence felt earned. Peaceful. Like walking away from a burning house and hearing nothing but the wind. I sat on the couch for a while that night, not watching TV, not listening to music, just letting the weight of it all settle. Everything was out in the open now. No more lies. No more second-guessing myself. No more pretending. She started texting the next morning. Dozens of messages, back-to-back, flooding my screen. First, she tried to deflect. Why would you do that in front of my parents? That was cruel. Then came the excuses, it didn't mean anything. I was confused. I thought you didn't care anymore. Then the fake accountability, I messed up, I know. But can we please talk about this in private? And finally, the desperation, please. I love you. You're the only one who's ever really known me. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I didn't owe her a single word. I'd given her more chances than most people would. I'd given her the benefit of the doubt when every instinct told me not to. I'd been until I almost broke. And all she did was use that as an opportunity to push further. She came by the apartment 2 days later. I didn't answer the door. I watched through the peephole as she stood there, makeup smudged, hair messy, holding a box of what I assumed were letters, gifts, or something she thought might pull at my emotions. She knocked for a long time. At one point, she sat down in the hallway just staring at the door. But I didn't open it. I let her sit with the silence she'd forced on me for months. I let her feel what it was like to be shut out, ignored, made to question her worth. Not because I wanted revenge anymore, but because it was the only language she understood. The next few weeks were strange. I kept waiting for some kind of emotional crash, for everything to hit me all at once. But it didn't. Instead, it felt like I was slowly waking up from a long, exhausting nightmare. My routines came back. I started seeing my friends again. I told a few of them what had happened and they weren't surprised. Apparently, some of them had seen the red flags long before I did but didn't know how to bring it up without hurting me. I didn't blame them. When you're deep in it, love can make you blind, deaf, and dumb all at once. One night, I went through the photos on my phone, old pictures of of trips, dinners, selfies taken during lazy Sunday mornings. And for a second, I felt a twist in my chest. Not regret. Not longing. Just disbelief. I couldn't believe how fake it all had been. How skilled she was at pretending. How she could hold my hand and smile for the camera while her other hand was texting someone else. But instead of deleting those photos in a fit of rage, I just moved them into a folder labeled False Start. I didn't need to erase the past to move on from it. I just needed to call it what it was. I started journaling again. Something I used to do before I met her. It helped me stay grounded, helped me unpack all the small, quiet damages she'd done, the way she interrupted me when I spoke, the way she rolled her eyes when I expressed doubt, the way she made me apologize for things I never did. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the slow erosion of who I was. And now, piece by piece, I was rebuilding that person. She sent one final message a month after the dinner. It was long. I didn't read all of it, just the first few lines. It said something like, "I know I lost the best thing I ever had. I hope one day you can forgive me. I don't expect us to be together, but I want you to know I'm working on myself." Maybe she meant it. Maybe she didn't. But by then, it didn't matter. I wasn't looking for closure. I was the closure. When you go through something like this, people will tell you to move on, to let go, to take the high road. But here's what they don't understand. Healing doesn't come from pretending it didn't hurt. It comes from acknowledging that it did and still choosing to stand up, breathe, and keep going. It comes from drawing a line, not just between you and the person who hurt you, but between who you were and who you're about to become. I had stopped recognizing myself when I was with her. Now, I was starting to remember the version of me who laughed louder, trusted easier, lived fuller. And I promised myself I'd never let anyone dim that light again. One more part left. One final chapter to close this for good. The final part of the story isn't dramatic. There's no explosive confrontation, no fiery revenge, no wild twist at the end. Because life doesn't always wrap itself in cinematic endings. Sometimes the most powerful closure is the quiet kind, the one that comes when you finally stop waiting for an apology, stop rehearsing what you wish you'd said, stop replaying the worst moments in your head like they somehow still need solving. The most powerful revenge, I learned, isn't about proving anything to the person who broke you. It's about becoming someone they never imagined you'd be strong enough to become. Months passed. She faded into the background of my life like a distant echo. Occasionally, I'd hear from a mutual acquaintance or someone would mention her name in passing. I never asked for details. I didn't care where she was, who she was with, or what version of the truth she was telling people. That was her world now, one built on manipulation, half-truths, and the belief that charm could cover everything. Let her live in it. I'd built something better. I had started writing again. Not just journaling, but real writing, stories, reflections, thoughts I'd never shared with anyone before. I turned all the pain she caused into something productive, something honest. I found myself walking more, listening to music without flinching at lyrics that used to hit too close to home. I started showing up for my life in a way I hadn't in years. I stopped being afraid of silence. Stopped apologizing for asking questions. I learned how to trust my gut again, the same gut she made me feel stupid for listening to. And slowly, I met someone new. Not someone perfect. Not some fairy tale replacement. Just someone real. Someone who didn't flinch when I opened up about the damage. Someone who didn't get defensive when I asked for reassurance. Someone who wasn't threatened by my past, but curious about my future. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen, not for what I could offer or what I could tolerate, but for who I really was. And that feeling? That's something no apology from the past could ever offer. There were still moments, of course. Memories that came out of nowhere. A smell, a song, a corner of the city we used to walk through. But those memories didn't control me anymore. They didn't sting like they used to. I could look at them, nod, and keep walking. Because I knew what I'd survived. I knew what I'd come back from. And I knew what I'd never settle for again. If you're reading this and you've been there, if someone made you question your own mind, made you feel small, unworthy, crazy, listen to me carefully, you are not broken. You were manipulated. You were made to carry guilt that was never yours. But you don't have to live there anymore. You don't have to keep justifying someone else's mistreatment just because they told you it was love. Love doesn't twist your words. It doesn't punish you for your instincts. It doesn't ask you to shrink to fit its comfort. You are allowed to demand truth. You are allowed to walk away from anything that makes you doubt your value. And you are allowed to rebuild stronger, smarter, and more self-aware than before. I don't know where she is now. I don't care. But I do hope in some quiet moment she remembers the look in her father's eyes when the truth came out. I hope she remembers how it felt when the lies unraveled in front of the people she tried so hard to fool. I hope she remembers that I didn't scream or break down, I simply walked away. And I hope she knows I never looked back. Because now I'm not just healed. I'm whole. And nothing she did, not the gaslighting, not the second phone, not the months of betrayal, took that away from me. I reclaimed every piece of myself she tried to erase. This is the end of my story. But maybe it's the beginning of yours. If this story hit you somewhere deep, if you've lived through something like this, or if you're still trying to find your way out, subscribe and leave a comment below. Share your story. Let someone else know they're not alone. We heal faster when we heal together. And trust me, the other side of betrayal isn't just survival. It's transformation.